Welcome to the Devhouse Podcast, your window to the metaverse. I'm Jim Welch, your host. Today, my co-host is Eric Peterson.
Hey.
So we have Carlos Fry with us today. We will be bringing him in a little bit later. But first, we want to talk about some gear. So let's check out some gear. So you saw this gear, Eric, I know firsthand, right?
I did. Yeah, I attended CES. It was a super fun, exciting in the middle of a pandemic, but a lot of people dropped out. There was still a sizable turnout, and there is a lot of cool tech. Obviously, it was overwhelming. There's a lot of cool booths. This one stood out to me.
It's OWO, right?
OWO, yeah, it's a startup based out of Spain, and it's Haptic Suit. So, yeah, it was nice to see other publications kind of take note of this, that I was reassured that I thought this was compelling enough to mention, but I think it's exciting. It's really lightweight, it's flexible. If you're able to touch it, it kind of has this lycra spandexy feel to it. But what also sold me is the various amount of sensors and sensory feeling you can get out of it in the front and back. So you can feel hugs, you can feel gunshots, enter, exit. There's 30 different sensations we can go through. I think it mentions on the website, but
That's
really the accessibility and the approachability of it, it's not just a heavy thing that you kind of put on. It felt very lightweight.
Whenever I think of haptic suits, for those who don't know the term haptic, it's basically like the physical element of the digital data. So, it's like when you touch your iPhone, you want to feel that little vibration, right? And that kind of thing. So for body haptics, it's always like a big vest, like you mentioned. It's very clunky, and they're cool, but it never felt practical. It felt like go play laser tag and you want it.
Yeah, I thought that too.
Yeah. So, but this is neat because it's like a kind of a, like you said, lycra, sort of like to your more like a real shirt and less like a giant vest. Did you have an opportunity to wear it? Were they letting people try it on?
They did. They let my my friend, who actually Lena, who a previous guest on our podcast, they let her try one on. If I pushed them, I feel like I could have, but they didn't have it connected to any games. So I felt it off the rack and touched it and got the full sales experience. And then saying it's completely washable. I felt the weight of it. It felt like a normal shirt.
Interesting.
Yeah. So really cool. And all the different sensations that they offered, and just the situational awareness that it could provide a game where if you get hit in the back at a game, you're right, it's like the screen would turn red or some acknowledgement, but you're really not completely immersed 3D until you feel it in the back. So that's what they're saying. Like, it almost gives you kind of this quicker response rate because you're actually feeling the sensation, which is, what haptics have done, but to deliver it in a kind of approachable or accessible, lightweight way, I thought was appealing. So
yeah, I always think of one of the original haptics was like the rumble pack on the N64.
Yeah.
You like stick it in the back, and when something important happens, it makes your controller vibrate. And it's, you mentioned like someone's from behind. I think of like sound, like now spatial audio. People need headphones to be competitive in games because you need to hear the footsteps are coming from that way, right and not left.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting to think. And even like with on-screen UI, a lot of games, you mentioned your screen will turn red. Well, if you get shot from the left, you'll have a darker red on the left. So you can visually see, I should turn that way and defend myself. And so it's interesting to add in that physical feeling, like, I felt that brush behind me, I need to turn around, or
adding another sensory, the only missing element might be smell, right? But it's like you got touch, taste, taste would be missing, but yeah, it's just incorporating a more comprehensive experience in a way that, again, is approachable, and kind of, I think I would see myself playing with that. It's at a $450 price point. Again, you're getting not just a rumble or a shake, but the punch feels different than a stab versus the gunshot. I think they programmed for gun battles. You have a entry wound, an exit wound, but also a bleeding wound. So it kind of radiates outward. So you're getting a more, you're telling a better story, a more comprehensive story.
Well, and the important thing too, though, is they need to get developer buy-in, because if no one writes those functions to say, if you're bleeding out, call this type of vibration, the vest wouldn't know. So I think hopefully they're making some big partnerships. We can see on their website, they've listed Fortnite, Rocket League, Valorant. I don't know if they're actually working with those teams, or if it's just sort of out of the box, some default stuff.
Yeah,
But
it's always all punches. It's
right,
just
yeah,
everything feels
every
like a
shot is
punch.
a punch. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
But they said you can feel hugs or things like
right,
that. So it'd be interesting to see where they could extrapolate that to deliver a more complete experience, right? We all want to feel a hug every so often, right? So
that
hugging your
especially,
grandma
yeah.
through Zoom or something.
Right. Yeah. Especially like with people, from the pandemic, there was a period of time where everyone's very isolated, and still some people are. And so that's interesting. Or another unique idea I had was like a horror game. Like you're
Yeah.
walking through something very scary and you feel something brush your back,
Yep.
right? And you're like, oh,
Yeah,
you
and
turn
again,
around.
yeah, different than just a visual pop-up. It's
Yeah.
like it's a scary, almost traumatic, but in a fun storytelling way.
Right. Yeah. So very cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's a gear we are wanting to check out today. I think, hopefully maybe we can get one of these. That'd be cool to have in the office and play with. But let's go ahead and check out our Dev Abomination this week. This one has a crazy bit and a pretty bit. So we're working on a more realistic. So we do a lot of stylized experiences at Devhouse for clients. So things that you want kind of cartoony or more approachable or more kind of artsy. But we're working on something now that's more of a realism request from a client. And so something we had to do is rethink how we do hair. A lot of hair is sort of just a polygon mass that we kind of shape to look like hair and represent hair, but we really wanted to make hair look real. And so we're doing a lot of R&D to see how we want to do that as a studio and how to make it performant on mobile devices, etc. And so this image, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can appreciate the hair. I think looks beautiful. It's a work in progress, but I think the work was done very well. But it's not on the most attractive face, and it's missing eyeballs. And I don't know
A
where this
character for the horror game.
yeah, I don't know where this character came from. And maybe if it had like skin texture and eyeballs, maybe it would not be so horrifying. But
Yeah, I mean, even mannequins aren't as scary, but yeah,
right.
it's okay. Just focus on the hair. We're just
Yeah.
concerned about the hair.
Yeah. Some of the things I loved about the hair, even though it's supposed to be focusing on the abomination, was just I love these like flyaways, right? So like
Hmm.
at something that helps hair look real. When you do the polygon hair, it's just a blob because it all has to be a shape,
Yeah,
right?
I'm thinking like Lego guy,
Yeah,
the
like Lego hair.
Yep,
Exactly. But then for something like this with the realism, you kind of need those strands that pop up.
that's the realism.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
and as people can see, our hair, especially with these headphones and stuff, we have these weird little things, and you really need that to capture that idea. But you also have to make sure it runs on a mobile device or on a system that may be like a Switch, Nintendo Switch or something.
Hmm.
So
I know there was talks to try to incorporate physics to it, how it's affected by the weather or wind or
right.
head movements. I think for this, we're going to keep it's stationary and just say, oh, it's a hairspray. She's
Right.
been
Yeah.
hairspray today
Yeah. You make your choices on what's important for that type of experience.
for
We know this.
performance.
Yeah, this character we know we're never going to get super close to visually. So we say, well, since we're never going to get that close, we don't need to maybe see it sway. We can just have it locked into place. But you can tell from a distance, there's a little uniqueness to it.
Yep.
But yeah, so that's our abomination / hair show off today. And then we haven't normally we open with news, but we started with our gear. But let's talk about some news in the industry. So this week's news is pretty cool. It's a huge purchase. Microsoft, as I'm sure many of us have heard now, has purchased Activision Blizzard. So many games people are very familiar with. The Call of Duty series, StarCraft, Diablo, World of Warcraft. I grew up loving Blizzard. I played Blizzard a ton. Overwatch, of course, is a big competitive game. All of those. Oh, I did pretty good. I just missed Candy Crush. Looking at our screen here. But yeah, so they made that purchase for a huge amount of money. That's almost to me like unfathomable, right?
Yeah,
68 billion.
68, 67.8, 68.7.
Yeah.
Yeah, billion with a B.
Yeah. So somehow, I haven't looked at the stats of how much a year or a month, something like Call of Duty makes in their microtransactions. And so I don't know how long it'll take for them to recoup that straight from profit, but I can't imagine that was necessarily the play to just directly like, oh, Call of Duty is earning X million per year. That'll help, of course, but I feel strongly this is a really heavy metaverse play.
Yeah.
That it's sort of like how Disney, has Star Wars, has Marvel, like they have all these properties you can go to Disney World or Disneyland and like get this huge experience, Harry Potter, all these things. I feel like in the metaverse, people are now kind of having like a cold war of like, all right, let's gather up all the IPs,
Yeah.
because we still don't know how interoperability will work. So like, how do we take our character from our Minecraft to our Call of Duty?
Mm-hmm.
You can't really, but maybe there's a solution. But if you, so basically you still have a what, the walled garden that people are talking about for Meta, like Meta's building theirs, like, oh, it's a walled garden. But if your garden's big enough, people maybe won't mind the walls, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
if you have 10 properties that people love, and my son, all he plays is like the 2K series, like the football, basketball, and then he'll play Call of Duty, and then occasionally he'll dabble in some others. But if he had a place to join all of those with one avatar, he would be ecstatic, right?
Right. Yeah, it's like little universes, right? You have like city-state walled gardens, but then you have countries or continent
Right.
walled gardens. And yeah, that feels to me that they're just trying to keep more things under their umbrella. You can interact with it on the Microsoft Store, Xbox, all these familiar titles that we grew up loving and living. And I know Activision Blizzard's had some problems and they're
Right.
trying to clean up their image.
Yep.
So hopefully Microsoft, under their wisdom and leadership, will continue to curate amazing games. And I've always have a soft spot for Diablo. That was
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just love it. So I'd love to see what they can do and hopefully incorporate that into Microsoft's vision and distribute it in wider areas.
Right. Yeah. No, it's interesting. You mentioned like some of the PR challenges Blizzard Activision's had lately, and it makes me wonder if that affected the price negatively. You would assume it would. You're trying to sell a business, and they look into do due diligence, and they're like, everyone seems to be mad at you, and people are writing petitions to fire the CEO.
They get you out a deal.
Yes. And it's crazy to think that was the deal. Like,
Right.
what could it have been if Blizzard Activision was like skyrocketing and everyone was ecstatic? So it's really fascinating just to see how kind of I feel like this metaverse push is influencing business as a whole.
Yep.
So.
Gamified.
Exactly. So cool. Well, with that, I think it's a wonderful time to bring on our guest today, who is Charles Fry. We do some work together, and he's an awesome guy. And so we'll pop him up there. There's Charles. Wonderful to see you.
Hey guys.
So I always like to let guests introduce themselves. So what are you known for, Charles? Who are you? What do you do in the world?
Well, I like to create opportunities. And what I found over my career is a way to do that is by writing software and helping people write software. So Codexitos, we're a digital product development company. So we help entrepreneurs design, build, and launch digital products. So that creates opportunity for them. And the way we do that is a lot of our team is located in Latin America in communities that have high technology potential, but maybe not as much access to the global digital economy. And so we're a certified B Corporation as well. And our mission is to elevate the overall participation in community in what we could kind of think of as a flat global digital economy of technologists and creative workers. So that creates opportunity for the people on our team. So our team, our partners, our clients, I like to see everybody win. So that's what I like to think about doing.
Yeah, no, it's really great when we had a chance to first connect and hearing about what you do, and not just running a business, right? So we all want to make enough money to survive in a way that's comfortable, but you're also helping a whole community at large kind of work in this space that there's a need for, which is really neat. So definitely fun.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank you guys too, because Devhouse, you guys are taking on a leadership and mentoring role with some of our team and teaching them some of the more advanced skills about development, AR and XR applications. So you guys are helping with that, and we're grateful for that as well. Our other partners are included.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, it's been great. And so yeah, Devhouse and Codexitos are we work together on some projects. And so, if anyone, who watches the podcast ends up doing work with us, there's a good chance that, you'll get to hang out with me and Charles, and we can tell you all about our fun stories in software development, which I think actually naturally segues into what we really wanted to talk to Charles with today, which is as salespeople. So, I'm an engineer, Eric's an engineer, Charles has engineering background. As engineers, we have a sort of like kind of creative, a little science, and we know how to build things. But then through running a business and having to make sure, payroll is paid, rent is paid, we have to get clients. And so we deal with clients and we talk with them and we talk about how much things are going to cost. And regularly in software development, I've found more than a lot of other industries I've been in, there's sticker shock. There's like, what? That's how much that costs, um, and that's sometimes understandable. I mean, software is expensive, but I think the question of maybe why is software development expensive? Is it really expensive? Is it perspective? And does it have to be expensive? Is kind of what we want to approach today. There's a way you put it, Charles, really well that I think I'll let you restate. But basically, the idea that if I say I want, let's say, a dating app, and I say, please build me a dating app, and you say, well, what do you want to spend? And I'll be like, well, I don't want to really tell you because you're going to take advantage. What's kind of your response to that reaction of the game of like, I don't want to say first, you go first?
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty common. And over the years and decades I've been doing this and helping people understand, the first thing to keep in mind is that if you believe giving me your budget is going to lead me to somehow take advantage of you, we're not off to a good partnership anyhow. So to me, it really doesn't matter. And let me explain what I mean by that. I can build that dating app for just about any reasonable budget you give me. So let's take away the ridiculously low numbers, and let's say that you told me you had $100,000 budget to get your product built. Okay, now that in my world that's a lot of money, and we could probably almost certainly build some pretty cool piece of software that would be recognized as a dating app. But you could also tell me that, or maybe Eric would tell me, he wants to build a dating app, but he's got $1 million budget, right? He's going to get a dating app, and it will have generally proportionately more features and functionality than a $100,000 app. So we can come back to the engineering component in a minute, but for the listeners that don't want to think about software, I often start by telling people it's like you want to buy a house, and you go to a builder. You've decided you want to build a house, and so you go to the builder, and you know that they're competent, but you're obviously relying on references and experience and conversations with people. And so you ask that builder, you say, I want to build a house. The builder says, that's great. Okay, that's what I do. I build houses. I can do that for you. If your next question is, what do you think a house will cost me? They're going to be confused. I think we would all recognize that they're going to be confused. And they're like, well, I don't really have enough data. Well, it's me and my wife and my 2.5 kids plus a pet. And they're like, okay, now where are we building the house? So we start by talking about a lot of functional requirements. Gee, Jim, do you want a swimming pool at your house? Oh yeah, add the swimming pool in. All right, that's a feature that you want in your house. So we have that whole list of things that we have to understand about your house. Where do you want it to be? Do you want to be in the fancy part of Dallas, Texas, or do you want to be out in the countryside where we can get land cheap but construction costs are lower? So we go through those kind of things. And then we have to start talking about maybe the non-functional aspects of your house. Do you want genuine wood floors, or do you want linoleum, or do you want poured concrete for the floor, or do you want antique reclaimed flooring? And And again, as you play this analogy out in your head, you realize that that house might cost you $50,000 if it's a tiny home and you paint it yourself. And it might be a couple $100,000. It might be a couple $1,000,000. And we've all seen, at least in my world, only online and in magazines, we've seen the $20 million homes that they're not 10x bigger. They're just more luxurious. It's like, hey, I've got 24 karat gold faucets in here. So,
yeah.
That's kind of the calculus that goes, and the engineering plays out the same way in a lot of regards.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's a great analogy, and it's something that I have to remind myself to share, because I think it's somewhat inherent in how we think about when we try to bid a project, to use a dating app analogy, or example. Okay, a dating app that has this feature, this feature, this feature. And we start like thinking about, if I'm building it, what do I need to build?
Yeah.
And then we think, well, let's say like profile pictures. Well, can they upload more than one? That's sort of like the flooring, right? It's like it has a profile picture, but do you want them to upload 5 pictures or 10 pictures? And so as an engineer, you have to think, well, how do I support this? What's the database costs of all this information? And so it's really, I think, a perfect analogy to compare house building to software building.
Sure.
I really like that, Charles. I think that's great.
So I'm sorry, but what we like to do with our clients, and any listener can do this, I mean, without us, we're happy to help, but usually if you're launching a product for the first time, you have one, maybe two, but really one essential piece of value that you need to deliver to test whether you've got a product market fit. So the dating app, you may decide that, let's say a 10-second video of someone is what you think your essential piece is. That's going to be the killer feature of your app that you need to launch. So what we do in our design phase and our design thinking stage is that our UX UI product designers, they try to get down to what's the essential value that we need to deliver into the market at the launch. And then we just get obsessively focused on what's the minimum amount of engineering that needs to be done in order to launch that feature. Now, that doesn't mean everything else is junky or half finished or anything else, but we spend the money as wisely as possible to get that essential business value out into the marketplace.
Right.
That's really how we've narrowed down on what the size of the budget needs to be.
Sure. And from my experience, the cost for large companies, sometimes it's not a factor at all. But we work a lot with medium and sometimes small business. And for them, cost is always a significant factor. And so finding ways to, if they give the sky's the limit interest, hey, we want XYZ, this is the vision we have, and then you give them the cost, like, oh, okay, I get it, yeah, let's cut back. So talk a bit, Eric, about how like we've discussed sort of like the concept of phased, which is sort of what I think Charles was alluding to there, was like you don't start with everything, you start with the core features. So talk a bit about how like phased development can work for a client.
Yeah, no, we in favor of long-term engagements, right? It allows us, I think, to iterate, improve upon an app. And I think I shared Charles's appreciation for, let's nail one thing down, bulletproof that, then we move on to the next, bulletproof that. And you structure out a proposal or work with a client on a design that, we can ensure the success at every critical piece.
Yeah.
I think we've all become accustomed to apps and internet websites and experiences that just perform seamlessly. But what's not necessarily understood when you try these experiences is all the updates and all the continual development that's happened since inception or the design stage. And so I think there is a bit of the demand for everything to perform as quickly and smoothly and optimized load times as some of the other applications. And so if we're still using the dating app analogy, Tinder, it's like, oh, Tinder's got it down, but they've also iterated upon various versions. And every time you update, you check your phone for updates. there's a new patch, there's a new update. So yeah, I think it's kind of guiding the client, and like Charles has said, you kind of manage expectations and say, listen, we really want to nail this. Let's focus on this, hit that at an optimal price point with an optimal amount of resources. If we want and we agree to move forward on the next stage, that was satisfied, that objective was satisfied, then we unlock this next phase, and then we can improve upon that. So it's giving them value, and they don't have to wait the 10 years or 5 years that it took Tinder or whatever application they have in their head. They can see value at a sooner rather than later.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, I think the concept of focusing on small bits is much better than what you call like waterfall. We're like, hey, here's the big app you want. Let's just plan the whole thing, build the whole thing. It's a 6-month project. At the end of the 6 months, your app is done, and we say goodbye and good luck with life. Those just never work as well. Like we've found, we do those. We keep doing those occasionally when the clients insist, but it seems to always work better to plan out an engagement that has these sort of check-in points and specific deliverables along the way. And I know, Charles, your team doesn't just engineer, you have other services you offer as well that kind of helps with that process of success, right?
Yeah, for sure. We begin quite literally sometimes with paper prototypes. I mean, we have people who are practitioners of Google's design thinking methods. We want to make sure that we all have clear language and clear ideas around what those valuable components are. Then we proceed with user experience and UI design. So those are all clickable prototypes. A lot of work gets done before the engineers really start coding. Again, we go back to the house, right? The builder doesn't show up with a crew and a load of lumber after you've decided how much you're going to spend on the house. They're going to say, okay, now we have a budget. Let's design it. Do you want the door in the middle? Do you want the door in the back? Do you want 2 doors? How many windows does this thing have? So you go through the architecture. Sometimes it's really detailed. Sometimes it's a kind of a napkin sketch. There are ways to accommodate all of this. But you try to be thoughtful in every step of the way. And for us, it's critical that our clients are involved every step of the way. It's always a red flag for us when somebody says, I'm going to describe it, and then you guys go ahead and build it, and I'll look at it when you're done. We just don't take those engagements. At first, they sound like, wow, this is great. We just get to do what we want, but you pay for it down the road. Everybody loses on that deal.
Yeah, you end up on a call with the client at the end, and there's misexpectations or misaligned is probably a better word, and those calls aren't fun, because it's like, oh, this is great. No, it's not. I wanted it red, not blue. Like, oh, you didn't say that, and then everyone's grumpy and no one's happy.
Yeah, and I think to our point, it's while we are in business to make money, we also want to deliver products that we're proud of at the end of the day, and we want satisfaction on all angles. And so I feel I'm not always communicative I feel it on myself if there's an error in deliveries, that I kind of take it personal, not from the guest, but I beat myself up a little bit because I feel like, oh man, I missed an opportunity to deliver something, and I thought we were on the same page, maybe we weren't. And so I do, like you said, being thoughtful, being mindful, check-ins, communication with the client, and that's what those milestones or phases do deliver. It's like, still on the same page, we're agreeing that this is how we want it, and opportunities to pivot and go in a different creative direction, those are baked in, where you don't have to work so hard to get to that point where it's not an agreeable solution.
Right. Well, I think go ahead.
No, I was gonna reinforce a thread there from Eric that I mentioned earlier in the opening, that there's a huge trust factor. And over the years, I've become more and more amazed and humbled by the amount of trust that our clients give us. Because even if we showed them the code we've written for them, they probably wouldn't know good code from bad code from stuff I cut and pasted off the internet. And to me, it's a very profound trust that they've taken their budget, whatever it is, and said, okay, I'm depending on you to help bring my idea to life, whether it's a dating app or anything else. And so these are very, for us at least at Codexitos, these are very intimate, sometimes emotionally fraught things that we work through. The engineering's kind of the easy part. The technology's not as tough as the psychology.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
And it's to Eric's point. I mean, we take a very real personal stake in all of these projects. And so the money's kind of the easy part once everybody believes that we're working together as a team for a common output. That's how we approach it.
Yeah, and to your house analogy, a little bit of background on me is that I worked at wineries. I grew up in California wine country, and it was a similar experience that I deal with the software. Often it's a very intimidating world for people. Our job was to make wine approachable, and a lot of people didn't feel comfortable spending wine at higher price points. And I didn't want to be the snobby waiter. I didn't want to be the snobby wine guy. It's like, what are you looking for? What's your budget? Let's find something within that. And I can go into depth. It's like, are you looking for sweet versus dry, red versus white, all the different paths that you can go. And once you drill in on a target that's within their budget and it makes them happy, that was the best feeling in the world. And so that's really what I want to try to apply in software. It's like, let's find where you're looking for, and I get to play matchmaker. And we have all these cool features, and we can do it a la carte. We can do it one by one in phased approaches. But yeah, it's really fun delivering experiences. That was what they're excited about.
What do you think? I think just sort of kind of put a bow on the conversation. We sort of helped hopefully guide people through, okay, why can something cost 10x for the quote the same thing? And so I think we've done hopefully a good job explaining that. But even if the 1x feels very expensive, a lot of people will say, okay, well, even the lowest number seems really high. I can just go hire someone on Fiverr or Upworks, and they'll build it for a quarter of the price. Why is that maybe not such a good idea? Or maybe to be more subjective or objective, when is that a good idea and when is it not? What would be your opinion on that, Eric? Of like, when to hire offshore kind of one-off developers versus like a studio?
Well, Carlos mentioned there's trust and accountability, credibility. We're an established studio. People know where to find us. If things go sour, I mean, we won't just evaporate. Right. And a lot of Fiverr, there's a lot of great artists and 3D modelers and people who will make software, and they, I think, jump that hurdle with. It's kind of like your Uber star reviews, right? They have review processes, and they're rated, and they're trying to build trust as the best they can. But personally, I would trust a established studio like ours or Codexitos. So I'd be interested to hear Charles.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. What is your response? Because I get that a lot, and I have thoughts on it too. So Charles, what do you say when someone's like, "Oh, I could just hire someone on Upworks. Why are you guys so expensive?"
Yeah, I mean, I think that pricing revolves around risk and risk management, and so we price in experience and we price in risk in our projects. And I've sold projects, just by relative scale, I've sold projects that are $25,000. Over my career, we've sold projects that were $15 million. All right. And that's a really gigantic range of work. First of all, the buyer needs to understand that there's a limit to what any one organization can deliver at. So every studio or every consultancy has a sweet spot. So you need to understand where their sweet spot is on size and time and money involved in a project. As the projects get bigger, the overhead on the project gets bigger. You have more supervision, you have more people, you have more teamwork to coordinate. So frankly, there's more administrative costs to very large projects. The idea behind a Fiverr freelancer is there's really no overhead. You're dealing with it yourself. So again, go back to the analogy of you want to remodel your kitchen. Hey, you can get online, probably on Craigslist, and find a couple carpenters that you can tell them what to do every day when they show up, and you're going to pay them 15 bucks an hour under the table. If that's how you want to remodel your kitchen, you can probably get it done, but we've probably all heard more nightmare stories about how that never ends and it never ends well. But occasionally people get it right, and they dig it. They like working that way. We don't discourage people from doing that. If you hire one of the really large firms, my usual example is to pick on Accenture. You're hiring a company that has global capabilities. They have 400,000 employees around the world. That supporting that's not cheap for them, and it's baked into the pricing that they give. So I think that the buyer needs to understand where their risk and administrative tolerances are, and that's what you're trading off when you get the guy off of Fiverr versus a studio like ours versus a big national or multinational company.
Right.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what's kind of fun about the Devhouse journey is when we first started, it was me and a couple guys, right? And at that point, it was just 3 engineers, and so we would take projects that were fairly small, projects that we wouldn't take today, to kind of point to that sweet spot of like, okay, well, we're 3 engineers, we're working out of a co-working space, it's fairly cheap to pay the rent here, and we can just hop in and do some code work and we're good to go. But as we grew, there is the overhead increase. It's like, well, it's a larger space to fit more desks. So yeah, we can close more small deals, but then that takes time to go do sales to close all those small deals. So yeah, your expenses start to increase, but then you also want to offer better services. So when we were 3 engineers, we didn't have a UX person, so we used our own personal experience and did our best. And but as we got to larger clients and bigger projects, we want to increase capabilities, hire project managers, not just because there's more people to manage, but because a project manager, there's a reason that's a job at so many thousands of companies. It has value that you can live without, but you feel the pain points of it. And when you hire someone off Upworks or Fiverr, that's great if you know exactly what you want. Maybe you're a previous engineer, or you just need a little bit of help, or it's a very, very small project that there's not a lot of things that could go wrong. But otherwise, they're going to do exactly what you ask, hopefully, but they may not. You're not going to know the gaps because you're probably not an experienced project manager of software development. So you'll miss them, they'll miss them. You'll probably end up with a product that's not great, but it might be good for like prototyping. So like places that I think or reasons to hire people like that in those positions, to experiment, to maybe do some short-term staff supplementation. In those situations, I think those types of contractors are very helpful. I would be very, very, very cautious for anyone who's like, I want to build an app, let me go hire someone on Upworks or Fiverr.
Yeah, agreed.
Perfect. Well, I think hopefully that gave somewhat of a holistic picture of, hey, here's why one product can cost this much, or even this really low amount, and maybe took away some of the mystery behind that for people. Charles, I know we've obviously talked about Codexitos and you guys as a studio. Is there any either projects you want to share, or where people can find you just to talk to you if they want to do business with you or just hear more about your experience?
Well, like everybody, you just go to the website, codexitos.com. There's the plug, EXITOS. It means success or hits. Maybe you guys can post a link. We're happy to talk to anybody, really. I'm a big believer in a 30-minute conversation, and we can, we either sync up or we're the wrong people. We like to disqualify ourselves as quickly as not. As far as specific projects, no, none. I mean, we love all of our clients. The smallest ones to the biggest ones are all cool and interesting in their own way. And we hope everyone has a great journey on whatever product they want to build for themselves.
Yeah, it's the fun part. It's the double-sided sword of service companies. It's like you're working on so many cool things, but how do you pick one, or which ones aren't an NDA, or which ones aren't released yet? And so there's always really cool stuff going on though, which is the fun part and keeps you on your toes. So
yeah, but I'm so encouraged you share my passion for again nailing the exact objective that you can offer your client, and when they walk away successful and happy with the results and you're proud of the work, that's a great feeling no matter
yeah,
what the budget was.
right, agreed, 100%. So
Fantastic.
wonderful, Charles. Well, we hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining us. And we'll obviously be talking soon for more cool Codexitos and Devhouse collabs.
All right. See you guys.
All right, take care.
Good chat.
So, Eric, I think that was really helpful for me to hear the house analogy, right?
too.
So, I've had these conversations with Charles before, off of the podcast, and I don't know if we've ever used that specific analogy, but it helped really drive it home for me that, yeah, like a house, the same square footage, even the same plot of land, that house can be wildly different price wise.
Yep.
The building materials, all sorts of different things like that. And so software is the same way. And you can also write sloppy fast code to just get out the door quick, but then you're going to have some bugs later on. You can do the electricity yourself in the house, but you might cause a fire because you didn't wire it properly, right?
Or it can be assembled by 10 different crews, all assembled from all across the world in the case of Upworks or Fiverr, right? Where it's like, oh, you're just getting pieces of it
that don't really work together.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, fun conversation. A little more on the business side and less on this sort of creative side today. But I think it's important for anyone who's considering building these types of experiences, either hands-on or working with studios like either us or Codexitos.
Yeah, and I don't think any budget is wrong. It's just like, okay, is it going to be a Porsche or is it going to be a Toyota? And neither one is a bad car. It's what are you looking to build?
Right, exactly. Perfect. Well, with that said, thank you for watching the Devhouse Podcast. We'll be here every week giving you cool, interesting stuff about the metaverse, and we hope you keep enjoying these episodes. Thank you.